It's amazing what a little bit of winning and on-field success will make us forget, like the fact that Barcelona is still broke and hasn't actually registered Dani Olmo for the season, and now they run the risk of losing him for free this January if they don't figure it out. Once again, Barcelona is sitting on a house of cards, and they've got to pull a rabbit out of their hat just to get their players on the pitch. We're going to talk about the possible impending disaster and how they're going to get out of it next, here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub. We haven't seen situations like this very often where a club that is leading its league might lose one of its best and most expensive players simply because they can't afford to register him halfway through a season in which he has been playing. But that is the bizarre situation for Barcelona and Dani Olmo in yet another chapter of their strange, twisted, and poorly planned out financial situation. And I'm sure they'll figure it out, and I'm sure it will all work its way out. It usually does for one of a number of reasons, but it's still a disaster, and it still reminds us that Barcelona doesn't have any money. So we're going to talk about this situation and how they're going to work their way through it here in a second. But before we do, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel. Get down in that comment section. Let me know what you think. How are they going to work this out? Get your comments down in that comment section. You can also leave some comments on Twitter at PitchsidePub and check out the website pitchsidepub.com. So it's amazing what some success will do. It makes us forget about things like the fact that Dani Olmo had to sit out the first 2 games of the season because Barcelona couldn't afford to register him because of their ridiculously strict La Liga financial restrictions, which are, by the way, incredibly justified, but they are in fact very strict, and rightfully so. We seem to have forgotten that because Barcelona's leading La Liga and second in the Champions League. They're having a magnificent season. Hansi Flick has come in and he's done wonderful things, and it makes us forget about the terrible financial situation and the fact that they only got him registered because Andreas Christensen got hurt, and because of these rules, they were allowed to put somebody in place for him. And so Dani Olmo came in basically because they were allowed to spend 80% of Christensen's salary to find a replacement, who, by the way, they had already paid for and had a transfer for. They just couldn't register. He was sitting there and didn't play in the first 2 games. We forget that he didn't play in those games. We also seem to have forgotten, until recently, it's now coming back to everyone's attention as we approach the January transfer window, that exception that allows Dani Olmo to play is only good through January 1st. That is only a part-year exemption. So unless they can figure out how to register him for real, because he is not technically registered to play, he is technically a fill-in. That's not the term they use, but that's what it is. He is a replacement for Christensen. He was not registered in the official technical sense. And so they still have to do the thing they could not do back in August, and they haven't made any more money, and they haven't found a way yet, so that's what they are working on now. And if they don't, he can technically leave on a free, which would be absolutely devastating. Now look, I'm realistic. I don't think in any way, shape, or form that is going to happen. I think La Liga will do whatever it is they need to do to make sure that doesn't happen, and yes, they're being strict with Barcelona's finances, but it would behoove La Liga to make sure that their best club, and currently Barcelona is their best club, remains strong, can make a deep run in the Champions League. They are a showpiece club, and if they had to lose Dani Olmo simply because of a regulation, I have a feeling that La Liga would find a way to work around that and help Barcelona out. That's just my gut. So I'm sure this will play out, and Dani Olmo will be on Barcelona for the remainder of the season and for his 6-year contract. I'm not naive enough to think that that's actually going to happen. That's something that we see in the headlines. But they are going to have to do something to make it happen. They have talked about selling suites at their new stadium, or their renovated stadium, and selling off some of those revenue assets, which is something they're going to do eventually, but they may have to do it now ahead of time just to get the money in the door, which has been the problem with Barcelona. They have these revenue streams, but every time they need to make a big purchase, a big move, a Dani Olmo, who was 55 million euros plus add-ons, by the way, he was not cheap, and that was a consolation price to Nico Williams. Think back to the summer, Dani Olmo was a consolation price to Nico Williams, which is that's who they really wanted, and they settled for Olmo, who's been very good, but he was 55 million euros on the transfer fee plus his wages, so that every time they want to make a big move like that, they need another influx of cash, and they're running out of things they can sell. So they've got the stadium that's being renovated, and they're going to sell these luxury boxes. That's one option. They may also have to do some player sales, which would hurt, but has always been something that they are looking to do. Anybody who's on a lot of money and they can get a fair transfer value for is on the potential chopping block simply because they need the money for new players. Is this the window where Frankie de Jong gets moved? Well, that would hurt the current roster, but it may be something they have to do. Of course, they have been trying to bully Frankie de Jong to take a transfer now for, I think, 2 years, and they've tried to send him to both Manchester clubs at various times, and he doesn't seem to want to live in that city, which, who could blame him, considering he currently lives in Barcelona. Manchester's not exactly Barcelona from a weather and cultural standpoint, but he doesn't seem to want to move. So is this the transfer window where he finally caves? They're certainly going to try. They would sell him in a heartbeat if he was willing. Or is it going to be somebody else? Regardless of who it is, it's going to leave a hole in their club. They are not going to get enough money for Dani Olmo without selling a player who has some value and is probably playing an existing role on this club. So, it really remains very interesting how they're going to do this. It's been now brought back to the forefront and brought up in the media, and the media has asked Barcelona's sporting director Deco repeatedly the last few days how this is going to get resolved and whether it's going to get resolved, to the point where he's getting a little annoyed by it. And his answers are basically like, hey, we're working on it. Trust me, we've got it under control. And, of course, if there's one thing we know for sure, it's that you can believe everything that, Barcelona tells you, right? We always get the truth from Barcelona. I mean, of course, what else is he going to say? We're screwed, we're going to lose him. I mean, he's obviously not going to come out and say that, but the attitude and the condescension with which the answers come is always interesting, because it's, we're Barcelona and we can do what we want and we can figure it out, and of course I'll figure it out because I'm Deco, and there's just this air of pompousness that comes anytime you talk to a Barcelona official, whether it's the president or the sporting director. Hansi Flick doesn't seem to have it, but he's not a Barcelona guy, so, not a coincidence. They will figure it out. They'll figure it out. They'll sell somebody. They probably won't sell a player. They'll probably sell, I think they're out of TV rights to sell, but they'll sell some more tickets. They'll sell some more luxury boxes. They'll sell some jerseys. They'll sell something. And La Liga will go, yeah, okay, we're pretty close. That's good. We'll let you keep him. And it'll all work itself out. But the point remains that Barcelona is broke, and I've been banging this drum now for 2 years, despite them continuing to make expensive moves. Vitor Roque, they spent money for him, and then it didn't work out and had to send him on loan. And Dani Olmo, and the whole summer when they were trying to go after Nico Williams and said they were going to get him, and it fell through because Athletic wanted the money up front, and they needed all that money up front. Barcelona didn't have it, and so they couldn't afford him. They just flat out couldn't afford him. The money was not there. And I've been banging this drum for years. Barcelona does not have any money. Not only do they not have money, but they're not allowed to spend it even if they had it. Because that's been the problem, is for a decade they spent money they didn't have. They are a house of cards. They have managed to pull this off thanks to the otherworldly brilliant play of academy players like Lamine Yamal, who has become one of the best right-wingers in the entire world, despite not even being a legal adult here in the States, or around that age. And, he is a fledgling young player who has helped catapult them to continental success earlier than anyone could have ever imagined. And that, along with some other young players who are on lower wages and who they did not have to pay transfer fees for, have buoyed the club, and not just buoyed them, but catapulted them to tremendous success, despite terrible financial decisions. And despite having to give away players like Ilkay Gundogan because they simply couldn't afford the wages anymore. And so it continues to be a house of cards, and yet we forget about it during the season because they start playing so well, and we don't talk about transfers and budgets and things as much during the season because there isn't time, right? There's games going on. There isn't time to do this. This is stuff we talk about in the summer and during international breaks and things like that. But now it's coming back to the forefront, and Dani Olmo is not registered. I know he's out there playing. I know he's on the pitch. I know he's in the jersey. He's not registered. He's not registered beyond January 1st, and something's going to have to change. He will become unregistered as of January 1st until Deco can figure out how to make Barcelona enough money to balance Dani Olmo's transfer fee on the books. That's what has to happen. And right now, all we know is we're working on it. we got it under control. That's all we're getting from Barcelona. So it remains to be seen, but it's one of those things we completely forgot about because Barcelona came out of the gate, started playing well, and are having a great season. And yet they've got this cloud hanging over their head, and however remote, there is a possibility that Dani Olmo could not only not be registered, but could technically leave and go elsewhere for free. I doubt that'll happen, but either way, they got to do something. I would love to get your thoughts. Is that going to happen? Is Barcelona going to figure it out? More importantly, how are they going to figure out? What move do you think they're going to make to get the money for Dani Olmo? Get down in that comment section. Let me know what you think. You can also leave comments on Twitter at PitchsidePub. While you're at it, hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel and check out the website, pitchsidepub.com. Thanks as always for joining us here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub.